In August, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz appointed 4 new regents of the University of Minnesota. Joel Bergstrom, Samuel Hines, Ellen Lugar, and Kosar Mohammed were appointed in the interim after the Minnesota legislature didn't make appointments this past session. One of those regents, Joel Bergstrom, graduated from right here at Edina High School nearly 35 years ago.
You're an Edina graduate of 1992, University of Minnesota graduate. You went to New York University for grad school. Now you're at a regent at the very place you went to college. What does that feel like?
Being a regent for the University of Minnesota it's a tremendous honor, but it's a privilege as well. I loved my time at the University of Minnesota. I often say that I cannot repay the university what it gave to me, but I'd like to try. And so being a regent, you're one of the 12 people in the state constitution who are responsible for overseeing this asset for the people of Minnesota. And so it's a big job, but it's a tremendous honor and privilege to get to do that and to serve the people.
Let's talk about in Edina now. Where did you go to elementary, middle, and high school?
So I went to grade school in Minneapolis at a school called Christ the King, which is now Carondelet, through 8th grade, and then I went to Southview junior high at the time for 9th grade, and then I came to Edina for 10th, 11th, and 12th.
What activities were you part of in high school?
I was a member of the cross country and track teams, and I was also a member of the Zephyr staff for 3 years. The Images staff, I don't know if you still have that, for my senior year, and other various things, but those were the main ones.
And then you were in Zephyrus, right?
I was. I joined the Zephyr staff going into my sophomore year.
How long were you in Zephyrus?
For all 3 years of high school.
And then on Zephyrus, you held a general staff position your sophomore year. You were sports editor your junior year, and you were news editor your senior year. Which of those positions was your favorite, and what skills do you think you took away from having those positions?
I enjoyed all 3 years. I think the positions themselves, it was fun writing stories. Being a page editor was a different kind of challenge, and skills-wise, just learning some of the layout and journalistic kind of presentation pieces. We also, of course, as reporters and journalists, learned some of those techniques, though it was a little more informal, but made a ton of friends. Just had a great time. I think there was a lot of trust given us as the newspaper staff during that period to kind of go do our work. So it was there was just a lot that came out of it.
Do you apply any of those skills today?
Oof. I would say my career has involved jobs that I need to ask people questions and try to get them disarmed and telling me things. So I certainly was doing that. I don't know how good I was at it as a Zephyr staffer, but that's something that you do as a reporter, certainly.
What did you write about for Zephyrus?
I don't remember all the stories, right? I think I wrote some articles about various sports events. I know I wrote an article, I remember, about speed bumps, when they added speed bumps to the parking lot to curb the crazy driving. And a number of other things. I don't, and some of them just not very newsworthy, more feature, but it was fun.
We saw that you wrote about Spanglish.
Okay.
You wrote about how students could take over the school, like kind of a guide to that. You wrote about new uncomfortable desks. You wanted EHS to get more desks in that article. You wrote about student council relieved of making announcements, something that now Zephyrus Report does in the morning. You also wrote about Santa Claus and winter driving. You wrote about policies on smoking at school, the Halloween blizzard of 1991, naming one's car, benefits of health clubs like the YMCA, the unexplained mysteries of life was one, new football helmets after a requirement. You wrote about a Minnesota Viking coming to the high school, and how standardized tests can fail to predict college grades.
Yeah, I mean, some hard-hitting journalism, right? But it was fun. We had a good time on the Zephyr staff, and publishing a few weeks after most stuff happened, because our publishing process took at least a week, and then getting it to printer, right? I'm guessing it's a shorter window for you all now to the extent you print publish. But we would have to write things that would not be newsworthy by the time they were in print. And we had a lot of fun with it.
What are you most proud of in your writing for Zephyrus?
Probably not the speed bumps article, but I wrote a couple of pieces that I recall. One in particular, we called out some very sophomoric, even homophobic behavior in one of the pep fests, which I don't remember what year it was, but at the time wasn't something that you would talk about really in schools. So I think I was pretty proud that we were able to publish that.
Did you receive any pushback on that at all?
As I recall it, it was originally going to be a staff editorial, and then I don't recall the details, but eventually we did publish it, but we published it under my byline instead. And I don't recall if that was just because some people were uncomfortable having it as a staff editorial versus my byline. But after it published, no. I wouldn't say we got pushback. In fact, I think it was very well received, even from some of the people that we called out, who understood that, okay, we can do better.
What challenges did you face in high school, just broadly?
I feel like high school was, generally speaking, pretty good experience for me. I think you're in that age range. You're always kind of wondering where you fit in, how you belong, and all that. So there's always those questions. But overall, I felt like I enjoyed my classes. I had phenomenal teachers, and that I still recall today, like how good they were. And I was fortunate to have found some good friends across a spectrum of activities that were just, in the end, good people, right? You don't know much when you're coming into it, but in the end, it's good to find people who care about you, who are kind. And I found a bunch of good supports like that.
What was your favorite moment from Edina Public Schools?
Oh, favorite moment from Edina Public Schools. I would be hard-pressed to find one. I wish I knew this question was coming. I would say just Zephyrus was great because I made some great friends. All my classes in general. One favorite moment, you referenced the Halloween blizzard. That was crazy, and I remember a bunch of us were at a friend's house, and I recall my mom warning me that it was going to snow a lot and I should come home, and then I didn't. We all got snowed in there, and everyone in my class has stories like that because it was pretty bananas. So it was a good experience overall, and I fondly recall. I still have friends that I stay in touch with, and then the teachers. A lot of us just remember how great our teachers were, and I am very grateful for that. I got a great education.
Do you have points that you think could have been better from Edina?
I'm sure there are. Overall, I don't have a lot of complaints or sort of negative memories from high school, and I don't think that's me kind of sanitizing it. I think overall I had a pretty smooth high school experience. At the time when it happened, I recall towards the end of my junior year, I did not get the editor-in-chief position for Zephyrus. And there were 3 of us up for it. The other 2 got it, and they were terrific. But I was pretty devastated. Right? At the time, it was like the world was ending. And I think back on it now, I'm like, it really wasn't ending, right? It's okay. I still had a great senior year. And did it change my life one way or the other? No. But it probably was a good lesson, and just you're not going to get everything you go for. And so that was, in the end, probably a good lesson. But I remember that being a very hard couple of days.
What do you like most about learning?
I am somebody, I don't know that I would call myself a lifetime learner, because I think people who apply that phrase to themselves, really read a lot, go to classes, stuff like that. But I love taking in new information and learning about new things. in my job as a regent, which I just began, I'm going to be learning all sorts of things about higher education policy and procedure that I certainly do not know today, and that fascinates me. So for me, it's just learning about new things because you never know what's going to pique your interest.
How do you want your experiences from Edina to influence or contribute to your decisions at the University of Minnesota as in part of your regent job?
I haven't thought about that. I think the job of a regent is one where you're overseeing this asset of the state, and a huge piece of the mission is educating the state. So just knowing how important and how fortunate I have been throughout my formal education to have received just top-notch instruction and experience. I want that for all the students in the University of Minnesota system. Because that's something that I certainly benefited from. Not just, of course, in my time at the university, but here at Edina, prior to that in grade school, and then after that in law school. So that's something that I think this is part of what the system exists for. And I want that for the people who choose to go to the University of Minnesota.
Now, you mentioned your amazing Edina teachers. One of them, you told the University of Minnesota recently that you were initially apprehensive about attending the University of Minnesota, but you had a conversation with your Edina High School social studies teacher, Barney Hall, who died last year, that conversation eased your worries about going to a large university.
Yeah, so Mr. Hall was at the time, what they kind of called the honors advisor, gifted and talented program. I can't remember what exactly, and he was sort of the informal college advisor he taught history and just a terrific human being who really cared about the students. And a lot of us in my cohort in his history class, AP history, we're looking at private schools, a lot of schools big and small. And I thought at the time, I had a few friends that had gone to a smaller liberal arts school the prior year, and in my head, that's what I thought would be the right experience for me. And it kind of latched onto that. And circumstances being what they were, the University of Minnesota was right there. I had earned a scholarship to go there. It was definitely the right decision for a lot of reasons. But I was a little worried about it because it's gigantic. It's at the time and still is one of the biggest schools in the entire country. And I was worried about that. Mr. Hall sat me down and he pointed out that all of the things I could get at a smaller liberal arts school exist at the university. You just have to go find them, right? They're not necessarily handed to you in the same way or shown to you in the same way. And that kind of unlocked my ability to see the university as a place where I could thrive. So that advice he gave me was just, I look back on it, and it was very smart, sharp advice that allowed me to, I think, enjoy my university experience even better.
You also went to New York University. What was your biggest takeaway from NYU that you didn't get at UMN?
So NYU is a private school, but it's a gigantic private school. So I kind of went from a big public to a very big private, and there's little things that are different, right? They do kind of hand you some of the stuff. When you go to receptions, they're actually well appointed, and they bring in crazy, crazy national speakers like Supreme Court justices. So that was one of the big takeaways. It was much more resource rich per student. It also cost a lot more, but it was a great experience. Living in New York City for graduate and professional school was the right thing for me to kind of branch out from Minnesota and live somewhere else for a while. I learned just as much by living in the city as I did by going to school in the city.
Why did you want to return to Minnesota after you were in New York?
I think most of us, you grow up in Minnesota and it's Minnesota, like this is where I want to be. And so when I went to NYU, when I decided to go to NYU, I know it kind of worried my mom a lot that I would never come back. But in my head, I always knew I would come back. I looked at NYU and living in New York as if I was always just visiting. And so I kind of took that tourist mindset and wonderment in enjoying New York City for the time I lived there, knowing that I'd probably always end up back here. And this is home.
What is something about the University of Minnesota or at the University of Minnesota that was there when you were there that you want to see continue or be revitalized today?
I don't know that I know enough to answer that question well. One of my favorite experiences when at the university was I was an orientation leader. And that program, which is for all incoming students, right? You go through an orientation program. I know has morphed a bit since COVID, when it had to go from in-person tours and small groups to something a little different. But it was an amazing program back when I participated in it. And I hope that they're still a leader in that, because it was a very leading edge kind of orientation program. So I don't know enough to say that it isn't that. I was very involved in the student unions when I was an undergraduate, and also student government. And I know that students are still involved in those things today, and it's a real chance to be involved in not necessarily higher university management, but really involved in certain things and learning different skills around how to manage programs and assets.
How do you want to build student voice? You mentioned that the student governments. How do you want to build student voice at the University of Minnesota?
You know, I don't know that I know enough to answer that question, because I haven't even been through the full orientation as a regent. As a regent, part of my job is to represent, I'm one of 12 people who serves on this board, and it's really important to take in the voices of all stakeholders, which is literally everybody who's in Minnesota, but students in particular, right? They are one of the main reasons the university exists, is to educate the populace. And so it's very important to stay in touch with those voices, and I need to figure out how best to do that as a regent.
You work for Orion Search Group. According to the University of Minnesota, you lead executive searches for clients across the nonprofit, public, and private sectors. Your work focuses on higher education, social services, housing, and the arts. How do you think that work can be beneficial to your role as a regent, particularly your work in higher education?
So as a search executive, I partner with clients mostly in the nonprofit and public space as they look for leadership roles, and look to fill leadership roles. And so my job is to really have a sense of, within each sub-industry, what kind of work is getting done. And so just having a broad knowledge of that landscape, including with some of my higher ed related clients, I think helps me just stay in touch with different issues and the work that's being done around the university or adjacent to it. Obviously, the university hires a lot of people. I don't get involved in that as a regent, but I have a lens on what that marketplace looks like, so maybe that's useful. We'll see. I do think as a search executive, a lot of my work is interviewing people and asking good questions, or trying to ask good questions. And as a regent, that's part of our role, is to be curious and to dig in on what is before us. So hopefully I'm at least sort of good at that.
How did you get to be on the list to be considered as a regent, and what was that process like up to the point where you were appointed?
So just in brief, the process this year, typically it's done by the legislature, and this year they couldn't finish that work, and so it went to the governor to appoint. There's an application process that anybody can do, and then the governor's team sorts through that, and there was a 2-round interview process with members of the governor's team and then the governor himself, and so went through that and was fortunate to be one of the people they chose. I mean, I don't know why I was chosen, right? I interviewed and the governor chose us, and so I can't really comment further on that.
How are you? Did you get a phone call when you were appointed? Who was that from? What was that like?
I did get a phone call from the governor's team telling me that they were going to announce that I was being one of the choices, and it was pretty incredible, right? You put yourself out there for any sort of role, and you're probably not going to get it. And so to actually have this opportunity to serve was really amazing, and I hope the next 5+ years and I expect will be very fulfilling. But it was a little surreal to actually get that call and to learn that I had made it.
Now, you mentioned that the governor took over the process, that the legislature didn't make the appointments, they didn't go through their normal vetting and approval process. Your fellow appointees, Alan Lugar and Kosar Mohammed, did appear before the legislature. People like Omar Fateh, who serves on the Senate Higher Education Committee, told MinnPost that Governor Walz appointed well-connected lobbyists. How do you feel about that, considering that people do know limited information about you compared to those who, such as one of your fellow regents, Penny Wheeler, who is CEO of Edina Health?
I'm fine with it. I don't have any sort of imposter syndrome. I believe that I'm qualified to be on the board, and whatever others may feel, I'll look forward to getting to know them and hearing their thoughts about the university. And that's how the process went this year. So it's fortunate for me, right, that I was able to then apply because I had not been part of that process. And that's how it ended up.
Do you think that there's a benefit to having it be open applications with the governor as opposed to more of a limited window with the legislature of who they're considering to be appointed?
You know, I don't really have a lens on that. I think anytime you have appointed and elected boards, it's an imperfect process. And this year, it went the way it did for the first time since Governor Ventura, I think. And that's how it works. Either way, you get 12 people who really care about the university. And I think that that's what the board is. It's an amazing group.
How do you already talked about how you wanted to build student voice. Do you think that there's enough student voice as it is at the University of Minnesota?
I don't know that I have a good sense of that. Certainly when I was a student, there was a student member of the Board of Regents, so one of the 12 has to be a student when appointed. Mm-hmm. There's student representatives to Regent who they get a voice and an access to the Regents. So when I was a student, I felt like we had pretty good access in voices in different ways. I don't necessarily have a lens on what that's like today, if it's more or less.
Do you think that you have enough connections with students, faculty, staff, and others at the University of Minnesota that you can turn to for feedback when making decisions?
Yes and no. I think that there's always room to connect more. And that's, I think, one of my jobs is to make sure I am connecting with those voices and finding ways to do that authentically so that I can truly listen to what those different stakeholders have to say.
Do you think that you have, kind of adding to that question, enough knowledge to push back effectively against President Cunningham and others who are bringing things in front of the board?
I think our job is to certainly dig in and learn as much as we can about whatever the item is in front of us so that we can ask really good questions. And in asking really good questions, you are getting to the answer that a fiduciary board must get to. So I think the answer is yes, but it really is issue specific and us digging in and doing the work as fiduciaries.
Let's briefly turn to some federal grants. In 2024, the university received $624 million worth of federal grants. That comprised 14% of the budget, according to the Sahan Journal. Just this year, the university lost over 100 grants, totaling $20 million. Earlier in the year, the regents, when you weren't a regent yet, raised tuition, they cut staff. Do you see that as a good long-term solution to fighting against these budget cuts?
I don't know enough to answer that. As we're getting oriented, I haven't even had a meeting where we voted on something yet. Mm-hmm. So we'll be read into all that and really get up to speed on it. I think higher ed is in a place where it's just so important, right? But budgets are very constrained everywhere. So I don't know enough about it to be able to answer intelligently, but I know that we're going to be facing those questions probably throughout my term.
On security, we've seen false reports and real reports of active shooters and other threats on college campuses across the country, including at the University of South Carolina, Villanova University, Iowa State University. We've seen school shootings nearby at Annunciation here in Minneapolis. Is the university doing anything different in terms of security to prevent both real and false threats, and should students feel safe on campus?
I, again, don't know enough about that. It's not a policy area where we've been read in. I certainly trust the university leadership to do well and right by the students and stakeholders on campus, and I know that they care immensely about those issues. I just don't know the details on any of that.
As a community member, not as a regent on campus, do you feel safe?
I feel perfectly safe on campus.
Let's keep going with yesterday's meeting. Do you have any initial thoughts on what you discussed?
I think the university has some great capital needs. It's been underfunded and underinvested in over years by the state. And St. Paul campus in particular has some needs. You need to take care of your facilities. We're in Edina High School, which is supported greatly by the community of Edina, right? Mm-hmm. This Performing Arts Center, this building in general, is leaps and bounds above the high school even I went to, but also the high school my kid goes to, right? So facilities matter, and like even this room in which we're doing this interview is something that most high school students don't have access to. So you all, I think, probably have a lens on that this stuff matters. It makes your education better. So investing in facilities in the right way is something that we certainly need to do at the university, and I think on behalf of the people in Minnesota, need to really shore up. You can't let these assets dwindle or break down.
Have you been on campus touring or meeting people since you've been appointed?
Yes, here and there. I think yesterday or 2 days ago was my 1 month anniversary of being appointed, and we're really just getting oriented.
How do you hope the university can grow, and what are some ways that you can see opportunities for growth overall?
I don't know that I have enough information to answer that in an intelligent way yet. The university needs to keep serving the people of Minnesota. There are geodemographic trends that are not in favor of higher education in terms of just the sheer number of people in any age cohort, right? Mm-hmm. Your high school class is certainly not small, but overall the number of kids coming from high school potentially to college is going down. So that's just a real trend that we have to pay attention to. But at the same time, the university has to serve the people of Minnesota and do so effectively. But the population trends are not in favor of higher ed right now.
What are you looking forward to most about being a regent?
I think it's going to be a fascinating experience, just personally and selfishly, learning so much about the university, what it does, how it interacts with the state overall. Just selfishly, that's going to be fascinating. And then we are a board that has to oversee this asset for the people of Minnesota, and that's a tremendous responsibility, and I'm looking forward to taking that on. And I don't take it lightly. Like it's a big job, and we, I think, as a group, are really in it for the right reasons and care about the university and this state overall.
Liam Hart, Zephyrs Report.